There's something about the night shift at 911 dispatch that changes the air. It's not just the silence between calls, or the hum of the fluorescent lights that buzz above your head like an angry wasp. It's the waiting. The kind that feels alive. Like something's pacing just out of view, waiting for you to pick up the line. I've been working here for 6 years. Long enough to know that every operator eventually gets a call that never leaves them. For some, it's a kid gasping for air during a fire. For others, it's the silence that comes after a gunshot. But mine was different. It started like any other shift. Tuesday, around 2:14 a.m. The station was quiet, the other operators typing reports or sipping burnt coffee. The monitors glowed a soft green across the desks. I remember leaning back, stretching, half asleep, when the phone lit up. Line 7. Unknown number. The caller ID was blank. That wasn't unusual. Private numbers come through sometimes. But the timestamp beside it caught my attention. It said, received, 2 hours 14 minutes and 3 seconds, logged, 2 hours 14 minutes and 3 seconds, call origin, null. Normally, there's a city, a cross street, or at least a county tag. This one was empty. I answered, because that's what we do. Procedure. But as soon as I pressed connect, I heard something that froze me mid-breath. It wasn't a voice. Not at first. Just static. The kind of soft, rolling hiss you get when an old TV has lost its signal. Then, underneath that, came a faint sound. Breathing. Shaky. Wet. Every dispatcher knows that sound. Panic. So I leaned closer to the headset, ready to follow protocol, to ask the right questions. But before I could even think what to say, I heard my name. Not sir. Not operator. My actual name. It came through the static like a whisper sliding under the door. Mark. There's no reason anyone calling 911 should know my name. We don't use them on calls. We go by operator number. Mine's 511. But the voice didn't hesitate. It said it again, clearer this time. Mark, you shouldn't have answered. My stomach dropped. The breathing got louder, closer, until I could almost feel it against my ear. Then came a noise I'll never forget, a single drawn-out exhale that didn't sound human. Like someone trying to speak, but only air came out. Then the line went dead. I checked the call log immediately, but there was nothing. The system had no record of an incoming connection. Line 7 was listed as idle. At first, I thought maybe I'd nodded off. Maybe it was one of those half-dreams that slip into reality when you've been awake too long. But when I pulled up the audio buffer, a recording every call is required to have, there it was. Static. Breathing. And my name. I played it 3 times. The third time, something new appeared in the background. A faint rhythm, like the sound of dripping water. Slow. Steady. Too deliberate to be random. I flagged the recording for review, logged it under audio anomaly, and tried to shake it off. But I couldn't. Because while I sat there staring at the waveform on the screen, something in me knew, that call wasn't from any phone line. The rest of the shift dragged. Routine calls, welfare checks, one drunk domestic. But around 4:23 a.m., I caught a reflection in the dark monitor glass across from my desk. Someone standing just behind me. I spun around. The room was empty. The monitor blinked, the same one that had shown line 7. And for a brief second, less than a heartbeat, the display flashed a phrase I'd never seen before in the system. Returned call, received. Then it vanished. No one believed me when I told them the next morning. The supervisor laughed it off, said the system was due for an update, maybe a glitch. But the way the voice had said my name, that wasn't a glitch. That was intent. I went home exhausted, crawled into bed around 7 a.m., and dreamed of static. Only it wasn't just sound this time, it had form. A shape made of gray noise, reaching, whispering, calling my name again and again until I woke up drenched in sweat. The next night, I came back to work. I told myself it was nothing. Just a bad call, a coincidence. But when I clocked in, the shift manager handed me a sticky note. Call review, anomaly file, 2 hours 14 minutes and 3 seconds. Supervisor wants you to handle follow-up. It was the same file, the same timestamp. But when I opened the review log, I saw something impossible. The system had cross-referenced the number with an archived record from 1998, a fatal car accident 20 miles out of town. The caller's name on that record was Mark Andrews. My name. Same date of birth. Same address. Everything. I stared at the screen until my reflection started to blur. Maybe it was fatigue. Maybe it was fear. But I swear the reflection moved before I did, just a fraction of a second earlier, like it was lagging behind. That was the night I stopped thinking it was a prank. And that was the night the second call came in. It happened 3 nights later. I'd spent those days trying to convince myself that what I'd heard, the voice, the breathing, my own name, had some logical explanation. Sleep deprivation, maybe. Audio corruption. A prank from another dispatcher who knew how to spoof a call. Anything. But that illusion didn't last long. The station runs on routine. The kind of repetition that dulls your mind until one wrong sound snaps you awake. The low buzz of computers, the tapping of keys, the mechanical click when a call connects, those are the rhythms that fill every night. When one of them changes, you notice. It was just after 2 a.m. again. Same hour as before. I was running through report entries when the red light blinked on line 7. The same line. I froze. There was no ringtone. Just the light. Pulsing, steady, like a heartbeat. Protocol says to answer all lines, no matter what. But my hands didn't move right away. It was like my body already knew what would happen. Eventually, muscle memory took over, and I pressed connect. The static returned instantly. Only this time, it wasn't distant or muffled. It filled my headset, a roar that felt alive, like being caught inside a storm of electricity. Beneath it, that same dripping rhythm echoed again. Slow. Heavy. And then, faintly, something new. Not words this time, but a sound like someone walking barefoot on concrete. Soft steps, wet and uneven. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just listened. After about 10 seconds, the footsteps stopped. There was silence. Then, a long, low exhale. The same breath from before, that hollow, lifeless drag of air. My monitor flickered. The caller ID flashed between blank and a new entry. Origin, 42°17N, 81°55W. Coordinates. I copied them down automatically before the line cut out. When I checked the location later, it came up as an intersection 20 miles west, near the old highway, the one that had been shut down after a landslide in the late 90s. The same year the accident file was dated. That should have been enough to make me go home, call in sick, do anything else. But curiosity is a kind of disease. You tell yourself you're just checking, just verifying, but deep down you want to know. So after my shift ended at dawn, I drove out there. The road was cracked and half buried in dirt. You could still see faint tire marks frozen in the asphalt, like ghosts of movement that never finished. The air was cold and heavy. No wind. No sound. Just stillness. About 100 yards in, I saw the guardrail. It was bent inward, twisted like something had slammed through it. At the base of the slope below, half covered in leaves and mud, was a piece of metal, a fragment of an old license plate. The numbers were almost gone, eaten by rust, but I could make out part of it. 511, MA. My operator number. My initials. I don't remember driving home. Just the feeling of cold air pressing against my skin and the echo of static ringing in my head. I didn't tell anyone. Not my supervisor, not the other dispatchers. The station already had its share of ghost stories, voices in the headsets, phantom tones, weird radio crossovers. Most people just laughed it off as radio interference or exhaustion. But what I heard didn't fit any of that. It wasn't interference. It was intent. The next few nights were quiet. No strange calls. No static. I started to believe it was over. But the truth is, the silence was worse. It felt loaded, waiting. And then, exactly 1 week after the first call, the system logs began to change. Every call I answered, domestic disputes, car crashes, noise complaints, they all started tagging under line 7, even when they came through other lines. The timestamps glitched, repeating 214 over and over. And every recording had that faint background hiss beneath the voices, like someone else was always listening. I tried swapping headsets. I even switched desks. It followed me. At one point, I pulled the data manually from the backup server. I wanted to see if the audio anomalies were on the original files or being added later. What I found made no sense. The metadata showed that the calls had been logged at least 3 minutes before they were received. You can't pre-record a live emergency. That's not how time works. But the system was marking them before the calls even came in, like someone was writing the future into the log. That same night, the static came back, but not through a call. It came through the speakers. We have an internal intercom that announces system updates, operator reminders, and weather alerts. Around 3 a.m., it clicked on by itself. A low hiss rolled out across the room. Every monitor flickered for half a second, and then the speakers filled with static, thick, drowning, all-consuming. And then, beneath the noise, a voice I recognized. My own. It was faint, distorted, like an echo trapped between frequencies. But it was me, same tone, same rhythm, reading out an address. My home address. I unplugged the intercom from the wall, but the sound didn't stop. It kept coming, faintly, through the unplugged speaker. I smashed the switch, yanked the power cord, and it still didn't cut out until I ripped the wires completely free. After that, I sat in silence for what felt like hours. My reflection in the dark monitor stared back, pale, shaking. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, but the rest of the room felt wrong. Like the air itself was vibrating with something unseen. When I finally stood up to leave, I noticed something scrawled across the whiteboard near the exit, a message written in black marker, letters uneven and shaky. Heard you. Returning call. The others swore they didn't write it. But the handwriting looked exactly like mine. The next night, I found a new entry in the system logs. Same line. Same timestamp. 2:14. Only this time, it didn't say, unknown number. It said, operator 511. My line. And the system showed it was still active. By the time I came back for my next shift, I'd already decided I wasn't going to answer line 7 again. That might sound cowardly, but you have to understand, there's a kind of fear that eats logic. It doesn't scream or rush, it just sits there, slow and steady, until everything you see starts to feel slightly off. Like reality's been stretched too thin. That's where I was. Still, I couldn't stay home. Dispatch doesn't stop for fear, and missing a shift means paperwork, questions, evaluations. I told myself I'd just keep busy. Focus on other calls. Ignore whatever showed up on that cursed line. When I sat down at my console, the monitor was already on. Usually, it boots up after you log in, a small delay. But mine was running, system active, cursor blinking on the call queue. At the top of the list, line 7. Active. Status. In progress. Operator. 511. My ID. It had been running for 19 hours. That shouldn't have been possible. The line wasn't connected. The phone wasn't even off the hook. I checked every system display. No live audio feed, no caller, nothing. Just that persistent tag, in progress. I flagged it for IT, left a note, and tried to move on. But it was hard to ignore. The red light on line 7 stayed lit all night, steady as a heartbeat. Even when the room went quiet between calls, that light pulsed faintly, like something was breathing inside it. Around 3 a.m., the lights flickered. All of them. Just for a second, but enough to draw every operator's head up at once. Then everything returned to normal, except my headset. It was on. I hadn't touched it. But the channel light was active, the same one used for live calls. At first, I thought maybe I'd brushed it accidentally, triggered a test tone. But when I lifted the headset to check, what came through wasn't static. It was silence. Heavy, perfect silence. The kind that has weight. Then, faintly, a sound began to rise. Dripping. Slow. Measured. Too deliberate to be a background noise. And then, underneath it, something else. A dull, wet thud, repeating every few seconds, like something striking concrete. My stomach turned. I muted the channel, but the sound didn't stop. It kept coming through, low and distant. Then I noticed the screen. The waveform was moving, tiny oscillations forming a shape across the timeline. It was forming words. They appeared letter by letter, as if someone was typing through sound. Answer me. I yanked off the headset. The waveform stopped. I don't remember how long I sat there after that. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. Every time I blinked, I saw those words again, bright and sharp against the darkness. Answer me. When my shift ended, I stayed late, checking the log files again. I wanted proof that it was just a malfunction. But the data didn't line up. Each entry for line 7 was time-stamped 2 hours in the future. The next 2 hours. And each one was marked with my operator ID, as if I had already answered them. I left before sunrise, hands shaking, every step echoing in the empty hall. Outside, the early morning air was cold and still. For a moment, I thought I heard static faintly through my car radio, even though it wasn't turned on. When I got home, I unplugged every electronic in the apartment. TV, router, even the microwave. I sat in the dark for a long time, trying not to think about what I'd heard. But there's a strange thing about silence. Once you've spent years listening for distress calls, quiet doesn't feel safe anymore. It feels like waiting. That night, around 2:14 a.m., my phone rang. Not my work line. My personal cell. I didn't recognize the number, just a blank caller ID. Same format as before. I let it ring. It stopped after 6 seconds. Then started again. 6 rings. Silence. 6 more. I didn't answer. Instead, I checked the voicemail. There was one message. It was nothing but static and a faint dripping sound. And then, just before the clip ended, a whisper. My voice again, distant and broken. Please, answer. I deleted it. Or at least I tried to. But when I opened my call history, the number wasn't there. It had erased itself. The next morning, I drove back to the station early. I wanted to see if anyone else had gotten strange calls or messages. Most said no, but one of the night shift rookies looked uneasy. He said he'd noticed line 7 flashing on his console, even when he wasn't assigned to it. The logs showed the same timestamp, 2:14. He said he'd checked the feed once, just once, and heard what he thought was someone choking. Said it sounded close, like the person was right behind him. He never came back after that shift. I should have quit then too. But curiosity, or maybe guilt, kept me there. Like if I stayed long enough, I could make sense of it. Find a cause, a pattern, a way to stop it. Instead, I found something worse. One night, while reviewing the previous week's audio archives, I noticed a file that shouldn't have been there. It was labeled, call number 511. That's not how we format files. Calls are numbered sequentially, not by operator ID. The file's creation date? 1998. The same year as the fatal car crash. When I played it, I heard the sound of metal twisting, glass breaking, and a faint voice gasping for air. Then, through the distortion, a single word, whispered like it was pulled from the edge of breath. Mark. Then static. The timestamp on the file ended at exactly 2 hours 14 minutes and 3 seconds. The same time the first call came in. That's when I realized what the system had been showing me, why the logs were in the future, why the calls were returning to my own line. These weren't calls from the living. They were echoes. Residual transmissions from something that happened, or was still happening, caught between time and death. And somehow, it had found me. That night, when I left the station, the red light on line 7 stayed lit long after the power went out. When I got home, my phone was already ringing. Same number. No ID. This time, I answered. And whatever I heard on the other end wasn't human. When I answered that call, I expected noise, static, maybe a distorted voice like before. But what came through wasn't sound in the normal sense. It was pressure. The air around me seemed to tighten, like the space inside the room had shrunk. A faint hum began inside the phone's speaker, too low to really hear, but deep enough that I could feel it in my chest. Then came the static, thick and layered, building in intensity until it wasn't just noise anymore. It was movement. Something shifting inside it. Then, faintly, the sound of someone breathing. Slow, shallow, like each breath was being pulled through water. I almost hung up, but something held me there. Curiosity, fear, or maybe the need to hear whatever came next. And then, beneath the static, a faint rhythm. Drip, drip, drip. That same sound again, the one from the first call. I could picture it now. Not water but blood. Not falling randomly, but measured, deliberate. I spoke. I shouldn't have, but I did. Just a whisper, barely audible. Who is this? No answer. Just the static shifting, rising and falling like slow breathing. Then came a voice, quiet, broken, and so distorted it sounded mechanical. You heard me. The voice was mine. I dropped the phone, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. It clattered against the floor, but the sound didn't stop. It kept speaking, faint and rhythmic, coming through the air like a whisper from the walls. You heard me. Returning call. I unplugged the phone from the wall. The sound stopped instantly. I stood there for a long time, just listening. The silence afterward was worse than the voice. It had weight. Like the air wasn't empty anymore, it was full of something I couldn't see. After that night, things changed around me. It started small. The radio in my car would flick on by itself at 2:14 a.m., playing only white noise. My watch would stop at the same time each night. Sometimes, when I turned on the lights in my apartment, I'd catch a faint reflection in the dark window, a shape that looked almost human, standing just behind me. It wasn't just at home, either. At work, the static began bleeding into other calls. People reported hearing whispers in the background, voices that didn't belong to anyone in the room. I tried to hide how shaken I was, but the system seemed to know. My console started acting on its own, lights flickering, lines opening without prompt, files appearing under my operator ID that I hadn't created. One of the night supervisors pulled me aside after shift. Said I needed a break, maybe a psych evaluation. I didn't argue. But when I went to leave, I noticed something carved into the edge of my desk. Deep grooves, jagged and uneven, but clear enough to read. Stay on the line. The others swore they hadn't touched it. That night, I went home and tried to record everything. The sounds, the times, the evidence. I set up a small audio recorder near my bed, planning to leave it running overnight. When I played it back in the morning, I heard the sound of myself breathing for hours. Then, at exactly 2:14 a.m., another breath joined mine. Louder, closer, heavier. And then a whisper. Mark. It wasn't coming from the phone this time. It was in the room. I stopped sleeping after that. Days blurred together. My coworkers noticed I wasn't the same, quieter, jumpier. But how could I explain what was happening without sounding insane? I kept checking the logs, hoping to find a logical cause, a data breach, a looping audio feed, anything. Instead, I found something impossible. Hidden deep in the system directory, there was a folder labeled Deadline. It wasn't visible through normal channels, only accessible through raw command input. Inside were dozens of subfolders, all dated years before I'd even started working there. Each one named after an operator ID. Every single one had a final log entry timestamped 2 hours 14 minutes and 3 seconds. And each operator listed had gone missing. I checked the records. Some had left the job. Some had died. A few had simply vanished, their last recorded shift ending at exactly 2:14 a.m. I don't know how long I sat staring at that screen before I noticed something at the bottom of the list. My ID. 511. The entry was already there. Date. Next Monday. Time. 2 hours 14 minutes and 3 seconds. That was 3 days away. Since then, I've been hearing it more clearly. Not through the phone anymore, but everywhere. In the hum of the lights. In the air vents. Even in my own heartbeat when the room goes silent. That same voice, broken and wet, whispering between frequencies. Sometimes it sounds like it's calling from far away. Other times, it sounds like it's standing right behind me. Every night, exactly at 2:14, my electronics power on. My phone, even unplugged, lights up with a missed call notification. The caller ID always reads, 911, operator 511. I stopped answering after that last one. But the calls haven't stopped coming. And last night, I found something new on my desk at work. A printout. No name, no sender. Just a single line of text in bold font. The call is still in progress. The timestamp at the bottom read, ongoing since 1998. That's when I realized something I hadn't dared to consider. This call, the one that started that night, never ended. I'm still on the line. When I got home that morning, I unplugged every phone, every cable. I even removed the batteries from my smoke detectors just to be sure. But around 2:14 a.m., the static returned anyway. This time, it wasn't coming from the phone. It was coming from inside the walls. And somewhere behind that sound, I could hear it breathing again. Only now, it was in sync with mine. Sleep doesn't really exist for me anymore. I close my eyes, and instead of darkness, I see that red light blinking, steady, endless, patient. Sometimes, I still hear the headset crackle faintly even when I'm nowhere near it. Sometimes I wake up to find the faint impression of the earpiece on my skin, though I swear I never touched it. I've started keeping a notebook. Dates, times, small details, anything to prove to myself that what's happening is real. The pattern is always the same. 2:14 a.m. No matter where I am. The first entry is from last week, when the static moved into the walls. Since then, the noises have become coordinated. Like they're imitating sounds around me. A door creak repeated 3 times after it opened. A knock that answered my own. Once when I coughed, the echo came half a second late, but it wasn't my voice. 2 nights ago, the static turned into something else. Voices. Dozens of them, layered and distant, as if coming through deep water. None were clear, but one always rose above the rest. My own voice, calling my name, over and over. I can't tell if I'm being warned or lured. The line at work hasn't stopped either. Line 7 is still active 24 hours a day, labeled in progress. The IT department says they can't shut it off, it's not connected to any external signal. They've stopped investigating. Every time someone tries, the system crashes. The last technician said the server logs loop back on themselves, every file tracing back to that single car crash record from 1998. The accident. My accident. I've gone over it again and again. The archived report says a Mark Andrews, age 27, was killed when his car lost control on Highway 42. No survivors. But that can't be right. I was 9 years old in 1998. I remember that year clearly. School, friends, nothing out of the ordinary. Unless the system isn't showing a death. Maybe it's showing something that never finished dying. There's a theory among dispatchers, half joke, half superstition, that sometimes a person dies mid-call and doesn't realize it. They keep trying to reach help, their voice stuck in a loop, echoing down the line. It's why we never leave a line open too long. Because if you do, if you keep listening after the voice fades, you might start to hear something calling back. I used to laugh at that. Now I'm living it. Last night was the worst so far. The power went out around midnight. No storm, no outage report, just darkness. I lit a candle and sat by the window, notebook open. 2 a.m. came. The street outside was empty. By 2:13, the air had changed. Thick. Heavy. The kind of silence that feels like it's holding its breath. At 2:14, the candle flickered once, then went out. My phone lit up on its own. No sound, no vibration. Just the screen glowing faint blue. On it was an active call timer. 001, 002. Rising steadily. No caller ID. I stared at it for a long time before I realized the call wasn't coming to me. It was coming from me. Asterisk. Outgoing call, 911, operator 511. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I tried ending the call, but the button didn't respond. The timer kept climbing, 30 seconds, 40, a minute. Then, faintly, I began to hear breathing on the other end. Not mine. It was ragged, uneven, wet. And underneath it, traffic noise. Wind. Tires skidding. Metal twisting. I knew that sound. I'd heard it on the recording labeled, call number 511. The crash. I held the phone away, but the volume kept rising, building into a single piercing tone. Then the screen went black, and a voice came through, low, deliberate, almost calm. You shouldn't have answered. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The words hit like a cold knife. Then the call ended. Or so I thought. A few seconds later, my landline, the one I'd unplugged days ago, started ringing. The same pattern as before. 6 rings. Silence. 6 more. This time, I didn't touch it. I just listened. When the ringing stopped, a faint tapping started inside the wall next to the phone. Steady. Rhythmic. Like someone tracing the shape of numbers through the plaster. 2, 1, 4. Then silence. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the corner until the sun rose, watching the first light creep through the blinds. For a while, I believed it was over. But as I stood up, my phone screen lit again. New voicemail, received 2:14 a.m. I played it once. Just once. Static. Then my own voice, weak and fading. I didn't make it. Don't hang up. That's when everything clicked. The crash, the calls, the endless loop. I'd been trying to answer someone who was already dead, and the dead version was me. Or maybe, it was the part of me that never left that call. Maybe I've been split between 2 signals ever since. One here, one still stuck in that moment from 26 years ago. Now I understand what the logs mean when they say in progress. The call never ended because the caller never hung up. Because I never did. And whatever I've been hearing through the static isn't trying to reach me. It's trying to switch places. Today is Monday. The date listed beside my name in the deadline folder. I can feel it building again. The faint electrical hum, the flicker in the lights, the static crawling at the edge of hearing. I keep checking the clock. 2:05, 2:08, 2:10. Each second feels heavier. The phone on the desk hasn't rung yet, but the red light is already blinking. Waiting. I don't know what happens when it hits 2:14, but I think I already know what it means to stay on the line. It's strange how quiet endings can be. After all the nights of static, the whispers, the faint echo of my own voice coming back through the line, I thought it would end with chaos. But as the clock crept toward 2:14 a.m., everything grew still. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights in the dispatch room faded into nothing. I was alone again. The monitors glowed faintly, casting thin halos of pale blue light on the walls. The air felt different, dry, electric. Every breath came out shallow, like the room itself was holding its breath with me. The red light on line 7 blinked once. Then again. Right on time. This time, I didn't hesitate. I put the headset on, steadying my hand against the desk. My pulse matched the blinking light, slow, steady, inevitable. The line clicked open. No sound. Not even static. Just the open silence of a channel that should be dead. I whispered into the mic, a reflex, though no one could hear me. 911, what's your emergency? And that's when the air seemed to tear. The noise returned, but it wasn't like before. It wasn't random static or muffled breathing. It was everything at once, every voice I'd ever heard through the line, overlapping, tangled, all pleading and whispering, like hundreds of echoes trapped in an endless loop. Through the chaos, one sound began to rise. A slow, steady pulse, not mechanical, not electronic. A heartbeat. Mine. It thudded through the headset, slow and deliberate, syncing with the red lights blinking. And beneath it, faintly, a familiar sound played on repeat, the crash. The one I'd heard every night. The screech of tires, the twisting metal, the breath catching in a dying throat. Then came the words. Clear. Calm. My own voice, older now, rougher, but undeniably mine. Do you copy? I froze. The voice wasn't coming from the headset. It was coming through it, from the other side of the signal. The line split, and I could hear two versions of myself breathing. One here in the room, one there, in the distance, buried beneath layers of time. The 1998 crash site. I could see it, though my eyes were open. The road shimmering with rain. A car upside down in the ditch. Headlights flickering weakly. The same accident I'd seen in the old file. But now, I could see him. The man slumped over the wheel. My age. My face. The name tag on his jacket, M. Andrews. That was me. Not metaphorically, me. He turned his head slightly, and though his lips didn't move, I heard the voice as clearly as if he were standing beside me. You took my call. And suddenly I understood. All this time, I hadn't been receiving those calls, I'd been answering myself. Every transmission, every static-laced whisper was the echo of a call I made 26 years ago, stuck in a loop between life and death. Somehow, I'd survived physically, but part of me, the part that called for help that night, never disconnected. It had waited on the line all these years. Waiting for an answer. Now, the signal had finally found itself. The heartbeat on the line grew louder, faster, until it merged with my own. I felt a sharp pressure in my chest, like something pulling, stretching, separating. The air shimmered, and for a moment I saw both worlds overlapping, the dispatch room and the crash site, identical, both washed in the same pale light. And between them, the red line of the call. I reached for the headset, wanting to rip it off, to stop it before it finished whatever it was doing, but I couldn't move. My hands were frozen midair. The static shifted again, forming words that sounded less like speech and more like thought. Line open. Signal merging. Then, silence. For a moment, nothing existed. No light, no air, no body. Just the hum of the transmission line stretching into infinity. I felt weightless, detached, like a voice drifting without a speaker. Then I opened my eyes. The headset was gone. The monitors were off. But the room wasn't empty. Across from me, at my old desk, someone was sitting, wearing the same uniform, headset on, eyes half-focused on the screen. It was me. Or rather, the part of me that had stayed. I watched as I, answered the incoming call, repeating the same greeting I'd spoken 1,000 times before. 911, what's your emergency? The voice that replied was weak, distant, fading under the crackle of static. I need help. I can't breathe. The loop had started again. The other me didn't look up. Didn't react. Just kept typing. As the red light blinked in rhythm, his outline began to fade, dissolving into a thin layer of smoke. The same thing started happening to my hands, my arms, my face, disintegrating, pixel by pixel, into the frequency. And just before the world went completely dark, I heard the final sound. The faint click of the line disconnecting. Call ended, 2:14 a.m. They found my workstation still logged in this morning. The chair empty. Headset hanging neatly from its hook. The system report showed a single outgoing call made at 2:14 a.m. No record of who it connected to. Only a file note appeared afterward. Operator 511. Call completed. They say sometimes if you listen to line 7 just before dawn, you can hear the faint echo of breathing on the channel. And if you wait long enough, a voice comes through. Calm, professional, practiced. 911, what's your emergency? Only this time, no one's on the other end. Because the operator never hung up.